Hello grade 6, this is your second video for the criteria BC work. Hopefully by now you've watched the first video, the one up here, the grade 6 introduction to parachutes experiment. So you have a vague idea of what our experiment is going to be and what it might look like, so you know what to expect. First task, we've got to start planning it. So we're going to have 2 lessons where we plan it, 2 lessons where we do the experiment and get the results, and then a couple more lessons to write it up. Hopefully it won't take 2 lessons to get the results, but it depends how quick we work. This first lesson, we're going to write an introduction or a title. We're going to write a question with some research or an aim. And we're going to write a hypothesis or a prediction, depending on where it's basically the same thing, but there's slight variations. But let's get started. There's a couple of things you've got here. There's a PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is for all lessons from this point onwards. So make sure you open up the PowerPoint and have a look at it. It tells you how to do each section in the same order that I'm going to do it. So the first thing is the title, and look, it says, be clear, be specific, and be short. So an example was the variability in Bunsen flames. Something nice and short, okay? Then you have to come up with an aim, and see here it gives you some subsections, 6 subsections. And at the bottom, look, we can see what we call the grading rubric. If you want to get a 1 or a 2 out of 8, you have to simply select a problem. So I'll give you a couple of choices, and you select it. If you want to do better than that, 3, 4, then you don't ask me, you state a problem or question that you're going to investigate. If you want to do a bit more than that, then you state a better problem or question, one that's a little bit more specific. And then for a 7, 8, you outline it, so you talk a little bit around the question as to why that question is interesting and who might want to know the results and why you feel it's a good experiment to do. And then the last thing we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to come up with a hypothesis or a prediction. 6 points to that as well. And again, you can see the rubric underneath. So this is what we call strand I, and this is what we call strand II. So just to give you a brief overview, in the MYP, you do a B, which is planning, and a C, which is like conclusion evaluation, right? For the B, it's separated into 4 strands. Strand I, whoop, too many, and IV, and we have an aim / question. We have a prediction / hypothesis. We have the variables, and then we have the method. And each one is separated into like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So down here we can see the first 2, strand I and strand II. You can see what makes a 7, 8 in it at best, and what makes a 1, 2, and everything in between. The stuff in the middle does often look very similar, and so it's just a case of, well, how good is it? And it's kind of my opinion on it based on my experience. So I want you to treat this first bit like a tick list, yeah, and tick it off as you complete it. The second bit is just for your reference here, and then the third bit is what you're going to write in. Okay, so should be able to do your name. Unit title is space science. Okay, and then we have a statement of inquiry for this topic, which you'll find in the PowerPoint of the first lesson. If you go into this PowerPoint, you'll find it. So you write that in. Now, title of experiment. So you need to make it clear and you need to make it specific. Remember, we're dealing with parachutes, we're dropping them. So think about things like, well, how big is the parachute roughly? What sort of weight is it carrying? And what sort of heights is it being dropped from? So it's a very basic, simple square parachute, isn't it? Being dropped from the first story of a building with a small, probably like 20 gram mass on it. So that's your title that you come up with, or if you're really stuck, you can ask me. But remember, if you ask me, you then are selecting a problem rather than coming up with one yourself. Then you're into the aim, okay? Which still is this box here. This is now just adding on. So the title of the experiment and the research question would dictate whether we're stating, and then this bit of extra bit is for the 7, 8. So everything up, this would be 1 to 4 if you do that well. This would get you a 5, 6, and this stuff up here is what makes your 7, 8. So you might do something real basic like parachutes, or simple parachutes. Then the research question always, if you look at the PowerPoint, it says you always write how, he says, not being able to spell, how does, and you write an independent variable. For us, our independent variable is the size of the parachute. Affect, and you write the dependent variable. For us, the dependent variable is the time to fall, and we'll measure it, but it's probably about 3 meters. Yeah? Yeah, that's how you write a research question. So this something like this, something simple would get you 1 to 4, something like this would get you 5 to 6. And then what makes the 7, 8 is what you do here in this final bit. So importance, I want you to talk about, well, why is it important to know this? I mean, recently on the weekend, you might have been reading about the fact that NASA's just sent up 3 more astronauts to space on a SpaceX craft. And halfway up, they jettison some used fuel pods, and those used fuel pods float back down to Earth using a parachute. You'd need to know about parachutes to be able to design the parachute for that object. So that could be an importance. Then background research, I want you to find out about parachutes. Tell me some science behind them. While you're doing that, you're going to be doing research on websites. So you need to make sure you save those web addresses and you put them in here and you put them in MLA8 or 9 format. Remember that there's something called EasyBib online that will take your references and turn it into an MLA8 format. Then a summary of your planned experiments. Just give me a description of what you saw in that first video. Yeah? So that would be, that's strand I done. Yeah? Strand I is about making a hypothesis. So you say if, independent variable, we know that now. Then, dependent variable will, whatever. So you say if the size of parachute increases, then the time to fall 3 meters will, and you decide whether it will increase, decrease, or maybe stay the same. I hope not. And then you say because. Right? If you select a testable prediction, that's basically you selecting this and ending your sentence there. That would get you a 1, 2. The rest comes from what you write in the because. You're going to use your background research and your knowledge to say why you think that it will increase, decrease, or stay the same. Yeah? You explain what you think. So I think as the size of the parachute increases, then the time to fall 3 meters will stay the same because according to this website, this law, and you explain what you think. And the better you do, the more marks you get. And that is this lesson.